Hello and welcome to WestMusings, 10-minute museum talks brought to you by Wells Fargo, Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood. And we're here this evening at the Computer History Museum with thanks to Box.org. The recording and post-production are made possible with thanks to the contributed help of Soulstream Studios. Welcome. It's my honor and privilege to introduce you to Susan Edwards. Susan and I first met each other in her work at the Getty. She more recently has moved to the Hammer and has become part of a dynamic team interested in figuring out how do we make relevant the work that we do digitally through engagement and education. And with that, I give you Susan Edwards.
Duck, 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 goose. Oh, you got me. I guess I'm still it. I have to give this talk. Thank you. Games. We all play games, and we've all played games all of our lives. I really want us to keep playing games more often and even in our work. When I was a kid, I loved to play Monopoly. It was a game that I could beat my adult family members at. I played it different every time, trying different strategies, and sometimes I'd take crazy risks, like spending all my money on hotels and houses. And when the roll of the die landed somebody in jail, hopefully not me, it was just so exciting. Games theorists and games designers use a metaphor to describe the unique experience of playing a game. It's an experience that merges the imaginary world with the real world. They call it the magic circle. In the magic circle, we all learn through experimentation. We take risks, and we fail. We fail all the time in games. And importantly, in a game, you create new meaning. And that's partially because the outcomes are unclear in a game. You never know what's going to happen. There's a space in a game for chance, for choice, for creativity. I've been really lucky in my career that I've been able to create several games for the museums that I've worked at. I've thought a lot about why games work, why they're fun, why people like to play them. And I really think that some of the lessons from games we can apply to our own world to help us give us a structure for taking risk and for dealing with some of the real changes that are happening in museums right now. So how does the magic circle work? First of all, there are rules. Every game has them. The rules describe the boundaries of the game space, the physical boundaries, but also mental, emotional, social boundaries. They tell you what you can do in the game, and importantly, they tell you what moves are not allowed. Another key aspect of games is feedback. Some games have levels, they have timers, they have a limited number of avatars, lives that you lose. Whatever the method, these are the signposts that tell you where you are in the game. In every game, you always know where you are, and you know what your options are. And there's something really safe about that. And it seems to me that when people know where they stand, they get clear feedback, and they feel safe, that they're more likely to collaborate, to share, and to be engaged. It's really important in the magic circle to feel safe because you're being asked to do some really scary things. Like I said, to fail and to go down paths where you don't know what's going to happen. But I feel that museums can learn a lot from this kind of work. When I started creating games in museums, a common refrain that I heard was a concern that the games not be frustrating. Frustration was seen as a problem. And this really confused me, because I knew that games had to be challenging in order to be fun. Nobody wants to play an easy game. But at the same time, I also didn't want to make my visitors to my museum or my website feel frustrated. That sounded wrong too. After I watched many people play games and talked to more game designers, designed a few more games myself, I realized how important frustration really is. It can actually be the key to making a game truly fun. This is what frustration looks like. It's excruciating, isn't it? We definitely don't want our museum visitors feeling this way. And yet, Serena Williams does not stop playing the game because she's frustrated. On the contrary, it actually motivates her. It can even be fun. And why is this? It's because when you are frustrated, it tells you that you're hitting up against your own boundaries. And that's a place where you improve and you learn. It shows you who you are. In the real world, we tend to avoid frustrating situations. But in games, we seek them out. Through games and game-like work, you can create a space for allowing yourself to be frustrated and working through that frustration towards success. Another aspect of games that can be unsettling is the open outcomes. You never know when you start a game how it's going to end, whether it's going to be difficult, how toiling it's going to be, or whether you're going to even succeed. And in real life, you could imagine if we started projects not knowing whether we were going to succeed, that's craziness, right? But there's a way of providing feedback to orient yourself and help you through it. Just like when playing a game, when you're creating a game, you're on a journey to an unknown place. And the feedback that you need to orient yourself is called playtesting. Playtesting is fun. Doesn't look exactly like that. Playtesting is where you create a prototype of your game, you put it out in front of real people and see if they can play it. It's incredibly humbling because your game, if it's a failure. The power of playtesting is that it shows you the assumptions that you are making about your audience. It can be incredibly powerful when your game fails completely, because in that failure are very clear signs towards the path for success. And this happened to me several years ago when I was working on a game for the galleries with a colleague of mine. We had a really solid concept. We created a prototype for the game. We took it out into the galleries to test it. We were really confident. And the game failed. It failed miserably. It wasn't even playable. And we figured this out after just 2, maybe 3 people testing it. It was really clear. But while we were talking to the playtesters about the game, several of them said to us, what if? What if a crazy monster came in and changed all the paintings in the museum? What if the player was going to save the museum from the end of the world? In these what-if statements, we saw a completely different game, a game we couldn't even imagine before we started doing the playtesting. And it was really uncomfortable. It was not a game that we'd ever created before. It was going to be really difficult. We decided to create this new game, and it was hard, but we persisted because the confidence that we had from those playtesters we had talked to told us that this was the right way to go. And when we finished that game, and we playtested it the next time and it worked, we felt like this. This kind of work can be so satisfying. It makes you feel like a superhero. And part of it is because it's collaborative, but you're really solving real problems for your institution and for real visitors to your museum when you do this kind of work. I've gotten to the point where not knowing all of the answers to the questions or exactly where I'm going with a project is actually empowering at the beginning. It's not frightening. I've started to plan to fail. And I found over time working this way that I've become more resilient, and the team that I work with is also more resilient and able to deal with risk and be more flexible. Creating a magic circle is really just about creating a clear structure and giving feedback so that people feel safe enough to take risks. And I'd like to challenge all of you here to think of ways to do this in your institution. How can you create a magic circle so that your staff can be free to feel frustrated, take risks, and test the concepts? I hope I've convinced you that we need to play more games at work, or at least that gameful thinking can help us create a workspace that is more satisfying, collaborative, and meaningful. I believe that games can help us solve some of the most vexing problems in our field today, which include things like learning how to innovate and stay relevant, at a time when the field is moving quickly, and also creating a satisfying workspace so that we can attract and keep the best talent. And that, let's face it, is really the future of museums. Thank you.